Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron. You're still importing Guzzle, and I'm using the HTTP facade like just a cool guy. I don't understand why all your stuff is so old and so slow. I thought that you were a great programmer, Joel. I thought that you, like everyone says you're great and, you solve all the problems. You're constantly hammering out code. You're working so hard, but you're doing all these old, weird things. Why?
Aaron, you're right, but I don't have time to fix all this.
Oh, that. So that's how we're getting into part two of this podcast, which is what's the other side? So we talked a little bit about, yeah, we don't have time. So maybe the first part, well, maybe if you're the person sharing the tip, you didn't sell the time benefits well enough. And so it's not abundantly clear for the person. But let's just say we've done that now. So we've taken on some of that responsibility. We said, yes, we can sell this even better, but now let's flip it around to the other person. It's the Joel who's saying, I don't have the time after we've shared that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was trying to go last time, but we're getting there now. And that's what matters, which is why we personally are frustrated when we hear that. Because I'll just be honest, I think it's like a disingenuine. Is that the right? It's not a genuine response to that problem. It may seem on the surface to be the right thing, but it's not actually. The decision you're making isn't about a time resource. It's about priority, right?
Yeah. It's not a lie. It's just not the truth.
Okay, I like that. That's a more succinct way of putting it. Very good.
So you'd mentioned, priority, and that's kind of what we talked about last time, which was, maybe you haven't made it high enough priority because the value wasn't made clear to you. But now we're saying the value is very clear. And so when you're saying you don't have time, are you saying you don't have time? Or are you saying I'm not putting this valuable thing as priority for me?
Yes.
And why is that you're not doing that then?
Right. So let's go back to kind of like your funny contrived example, which is like, modernization of code or keeping things up to date with like the current way Laravel does it. Maybe it's you went from Laravel 10 to 11 and now there's a new way of doing something, but the old one still works. And so you're still using it. Or maybe that's going back to Laravel 5 and you're still doing it in Laravel 11. What is being said, I think what really is meant when somebody says is I don't have time is I recognize that will take time. I recognize there is a limited amount of time in the day for me to work on things. Like those are both true. I see there will be a benefit. I'm assuming that, right? I just don't think that's the thing for me to do right now. I think there's better ways to spend my time is maybe a more accurate way to respond. And I think what would be less frustrating to us to hear it expressed that way. Would that resonate with you if somebody said, I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. I see what you're saying, but it's not important enough for me to do that right now.
I would love to hear that.
Okay.
And I think that you're saying it nicely. So we kind of joked that like I will comment stuff a little bit more aggressively. But
Right.
I think that that's a nice way. That's a way of giving people, a way to save face still, which is like, hey, I understand, everything, but it's not important to me. It's like, really? Because you just described how valuable it is. You just said, I want to do it, all these different things. What you're really describing to me is there's a conflict and you don't want to face the conflict. And that conflict could be, I will feel uncomfortable on my own project, spending some time doing a thing where I don't see forward movement. The conflict could be, I don't know how to pitch it, or my boss will get mad at me if I want to do something that doesn't immediately look like it's generating revenue for the company. There's a bunch of these conflicts that I think the person is not intending to face. So you said it a nice way, but I still think that allows people to say like, oh, well, yeah, it's not important to me. Why? Why is it not important? If you keep living life like that, it's never going to get better. Motivational speaker today, Aaron, right? Come on.
You brought some nuance into it because I guess the framing of this would depend. Are you the decision maker or not? Right. So if we're coming to you as a fellow dev in a project, but you're not the decision maker on setting the priorities from the project, that's one framing. Or if this is your own personal project and you're like, hey, Joel, I need some help. And I tell you this will help you. And then you're like, well, I don't know. That's a different framing. And I think both of those carry, like you said, different sets of conflict. And so I'm glad you brought that out because I could see somebody listening to this and being like, well, that doesn't apply to me because I have a boss and I can't even make that decision. But you're not letting them off the hook because they could frame it for the boss. If they really want this to happen, they might not be successful, but they could at least try to make it a priority for the team. And then basically relay what we said in the last episode, how to sell it, how to make it palatable, how to be honest, and those sorts of things.
I remember on maybe a earlier podcast or some sort of conversation we had a long time ago, I had mentioned that whenever there's a major Laravel version come out,
Hmm.
I will read the manual from start to finish again.
Yep.
And obviously there's jokes there. Oh, you're such a nerd, or, or where do you find the time to do that?
Okay.
And now you see the whole thing is I stop what I'm doing and I read the manual. And that day or two, I actually don't get a lot of quote work done. I'm way better for the rest of the next
Yeah.
couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if the goal of this episode isn't just to beat up on people that use that excuse, which it is, I don't have
Mhm.
time as an excuse.
Right.
Um, we shared some productive things, but I want to go a little bit deeper for the person in that mindset, and I am that person from time to time. Just being honest. What would you say, Aaron, might help somebody to overcome that? Like that if they catch themselves saying, "I don't have time," right? It's not that they disagree with the advice; they're just like, "I don't have time." Do you have any like mental shifts or suggestions on how to catch yourself doing that and maybe redirect your thinking on it?
Just get better. No. Um,
Such
I don't,
such
I don't, I
elegant
don't,
coaching.
I don't know about the beginning part, but I can tell
Okay.
you after you've taken this advice one time,
Yeah,
there's a good time for reflection. So if you've taken this advice, and I'm sure that Joel, you have some input here too, but
I
if you've
do.
taken the advice and then you see the success, which you will, take a minute to reflect on that and remember how you felt, what time you didn't have, and now look, write down or reflect however you do in the time that you've gained, and say like, look at, I actually have data now because I'm a programmer and I need data. Data that when I feel this way, there's still a chance it's going to come out opposite of how I feel. Successful.
Yeah, I like that. I'll share a personal story that helped me a lot, and I think I've shared this with you before. But I was working with a coach, not outside the realm of technology. It was like health and fitness and all that stuff. And I forget the specific. It was some new exercise. Yeah, I think I was like lifting weights twice a week, and she's like, actually, if you did 3 times, you'd have these benefits. And I said, I don't have time. So she called me to task on it. But the example she used really resonated with me because I clearly saw how foolish that answer is in the right context. And so I'll share that. So she said, so Joel, what's keeping you from doing it? Well, it's work, right? Like I work out during the day. So now this is like an hour or 2 hours I have to take off during the day. I'm already doing that twice a week. I have more work. She's like, so let me ask you if
No,
you're
no,
if
no, no. First of all, you didn't want to do it.
I mean, yes. Let's
Okay.
be honest. That's the
Yeah. Because like as soon as you started like, well, I have work. I'm like, no, I know your work schedule. I work with you.
that's right. So she didn't take that angle, but that is a valid angle too. She said, well, let me ask you if you're because I work from home. If you're working at home and your kid said, "Hey, Dad, I want to like play a game," I would probably say the same thing. I don't have time. Let's do it after work. She's like, but what if the kid came in and had like blood gushing out of their eyes or mouth or something? Would you be like, well, I don't have time? Like, no, obviously your priorities would shift. You would stop what you're doing. You would get them patched up, and then you'd go back to work. And in reality, nothing bad would happen, right? Like, I'm not going to lose a client. I'm not going to get fired. I'm not going to like be unable to pay my mortgage that month. Like, none of that's going to happen. And so it was kind of a silly example, but it was sort of also a shocking example because it's like, well, clearly that's something that would bubble up priority wise to the top. And obviously exercise isn't like that level in my life, but she was just making the point. It's not about the time, it's about the priority, which is what we're saying here. So I just wanted to share that story because like that's a mental game you could play with yourself. If you're saying I don't have time, just think of something, and maybe you don't have kids, but just think of something in your life, like a car crashed into your front door. Would you just be like, I'll go look at that later this afternoon? Like, no, you would stop what you're doing and you would go deal with it. Does that resonate?
Yep.
Okay, so hopefully those things are helpful. So we've said what we had to say, but seriously, that like I think this is if you can make this mental shift, and even if in the moment your actions don't change, if you just recognize and be honest with yourself, it's not a priority, you're making progress. So that's our message for today.
So why do fat chance and slim chance mean the same thing?
Hold on a second. There's a fat chance that'll happen. Yeah, you're right. Do you have any answer? Or are you coming to
No.
me for this West?
Yes, because you're so wise and aged. I mean, seasoned. I thought you might know the answer to this.
I got nothing on that one. All I can do is make it even worse and ask why famous and infamous mean the same thing. So there, Aaron.
Oh. You know, they say the most valuable thing in the world is not money, but it's your time. And so I'm a little reluctant to say I need some of your time, but I do.
We're talking about books that we've published. It's over at masteringlaravel.io. Some are free, some are paid. They will take time to read, but they will make you a better Laravel developer.